Greetings. Aloha, kako. I had one of the viewers remind me that it's been a while since we had a Grumpy Gardener medicine show. And so I've decided to go back and do an episode of the Grumpy Gardener. Since I'm feeling plenty grumpy today, and by the way, I assure all of you out there that this is totally about medicine and gardens. Okay? We won't wander into the state of the nation. Before I moved here to Hawaii, I never considered the pineapple to be a healthful herb. It's a delicious thing to eat. Man, it don't get no better than that. But the pineapple was never on my list of herbal medicines. It was only after living here for a while and eating this fruit, because we have maybe 1,000 or more plants in the field. I've lost count. Okay. Now we have about 36 varieties of this here too. And so kind of specialized in the pineapple. And because we have so many and I eat it in season constantly, I began to realize that I wasn't feeling any body pains when I ate large amounts of this thing. 2-3 helpings of the pineapple a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it seemed like I was a new man. You know, I'm not the spring chicken anymore, and I do have aches and pains all over in various locations that have developed because of, injuries and wear and tear and all that. Nothing serious, but I get them. And of course, I'm out there gardening all the time and a lot of exercise, and sometimes I just get sore muscles, Well, I found that when I was consuming pineapple, I wasn't bothered by all this, that I felt good most of the time. And then, of course, I have been using turmeric with black pepper in my meals too. And the combination of consuming turmeric with black pepper in the diet and consuming large amounts of pineapple was leaving me feeling like I was, not 18, maybe 32, I don't know, half my age, for sure. So I looked it up and found out that, there is an enzyme they call Bromelain. It comes from the pineapple, and it's sold commercially, and it's pretty well known for a number of different properties, but particularly that anti-inflammatory quality that it has. It's especially good on inflammation that's in the nose and the sinus. It's a good anti-inflammatory after surgery. It's also good when there's just an injury. You've twisted your ankle or some such thing like that. It's known historically in the Caribbean to work on digestive disorders. It's also real good for just plain old sore muscles, which is most of what I get. It has really low side effects in general. So if you were using the enzyme supplement in a bottle, as a side effect, it's possible you could have diarrhea or nausea. Now, that isn't going to occur if you're just using the pineapple in your diet. Okay, so when it's just in the fruit, it's not likely that you're going to experience that. You'd have to eat an awful lot of pineapples first. I guess, too much fruit has that reaction with people, so that's always possible. But as far as side effects go, these are very minimal, especially compared to a lot of pharmaceuticals and over-the-counter type things, because like naproxen, which is used for inflammation in the body, boy, does that stuff mess with my stomach. Oh my goodness. So this is much easier on you. It's also a real good meat tenderizer, and I have a small funny story about that one, in that we were saving all the cores from our pineapples when we cored them out here, and keeping them in the freezer to use as a meat tenderizer. Well, this worked out fine when I had a piece of pork, for instance, or something that was fairly tough, that was fibrous, and you'd put it in there with the ground up cores for a while, and it would soften the meat up some. This is traditional in some of the Mexican dishes. So we take into using pineapples as a meat tenderizer. And it worked pretty well on some things, but one time I put some chicken thighs in that stuff, and I left them in the refrigerator until the next day in the pineapple solution. When I took them out and cooked them, every piece of fiber in that chicken had dissolved. The chicken literally had turned into something on the order of putty. I mean, it was disgusting. I won't ever do it again. Okay, but I do happen to cook fresh pineapple fruit in with meat. I cook it in with vegetables. We had a stir fry the other day with mixed vegetables and shrimp that had pineapple in it. Real good. I really like pineapple with pork, even though I shouldn't be eating so much of it because of the gout problems. Of course, it's always great in a fruit salad or just as it is. There's so many ways a person can actually utilize pineapple. We make popsicles out of it here a lot. When we core out a pineapple, get the rings, and we have waste material left in the top and the bottom ends and the sides, so we'll cut that material out and then use it to create popsicles. It's a very nice way to eat the fruit. Just put it in a popsicle mold with water and lots of pineapple juice and freeze it. The best part about the pineapple, it really tastes good. It really tastes good. I just brought one in from the field here this morning, and using my cutter, I sliced this guy up. There's some handy dandy tools out there that'll do this for you and make pineapple rings real quick. Oh, man. Oh. Okay. I knew there was something else I had to mention. I can't shoot a video and eat pineapple. Stop. Whoa, is that good? As I had mentioned, we do have a number of varieties of pineapples here. They all vary a little bit. One of the qualities that we seek when we're choosing the pineapple varieties is low acidity. Low acidity does make them a little bit harder to ship or to keep. They don't keep as well when the acid's low. Most commercial pineapples have a pretty high acid content because it protects the fruit in transport. Ones we grow here, known as white pineapples, some people call them Kapoho whites, some call them Hilo whites, and on the other side they're Kona whites. I think the actual variety originally was a white sugarloaf, but I'm really uncertain of the origin. We got our originals here out of the farmer's market on this variety. Anyhow, the white pineapple is a low acid pineapple, and so because of the low acidity in the fruit, it gets around a lot of the problems that some people have with pineapples. The high acid pineapples can create, it's like citrus cankers. You eat too much of it, it can affect the mouth. The bromelain that's in there that will dissolve meat fibers will also eat away at your mouth and tongue, especially with particularly susceptible people. There's a lady here in the neighborhood that makes some great ribs and sells them in Mountain View occasionally, and I had offered her pineapples for her menus, and she's so allergic to them she can't even touch the darn thing. So there are a few people who are very sensitive to this, but that isn't really most of us. And if you're not familiar with the whites, the low acid pineapples, and you've had trouble with, getting sores in the mouth from eating too much pineapple, you might want to consider looking for them. Not easy to find in the mainland, not because they don't ship that well. Although being able to grow them yourself is not a really difficult thing to do. It's possible to fruit a pineapple in a 1 or 2 gallon container. I've done this for years in California in my unheated greenhouse. They will also make houseplants. It's a very tolerant and durable plant. I love it as a crop because it's just so forgiving. It's really a great thing. I have taken pineapple tops and tossed them out on top of my weed block here to use as ballast to hold down the weed block against the wind, and had those tops send roots out in the rain here in Mountain View, send up a stalk, make a pineapple on top without even touching the soil. it's a poor quality pineapple grown that way, believe me. But they will do it. This is one tough cookie of a plant. And so let's talk a little bit about how you grow one of these. Now, for most of us, we'd be using the top, because that's what you're going to get off the pineapple you bought in the market, and those tops will ordinarily grow. If you find your pineapples with a nice, good, green, fresh-looking top that isn't all beat to death and brown, it's going to grow. All right. And so, first thing we do is we turn the top over. Now, a lot of people cut these off. I don't. A lot of the good varieties of pineapples will come off with a twist. Not every type. But this is a soft core type, and it does twist right off. Then we get the top. The next thing you do is this little leaf scales here. All the leaf scales, in this case, that are pointing up, but they're actually pointing down. You see where they're pointing down, and then they start pointing up? Okay, that's the line. And so we start to pull these scales off from the side of the stem. And as we do that, what happens is I start exposing some vestal roots that are actually already in here, getting ready to grow this plant. That's about enough of them right there. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, you do need enough of a stub on the bottom in order to get it to stay stable in the soil. Stability is important when you're making cuttings. Now, right there, maybe y'all can see that. That's a root. And there's another one right here. They've already formed. This top is off the pineapple I just ate. And so the edible portion is already ready to plant. And so this is pretty simple stuff. It's almost silly for me to show it to you. But here I have a 1-gallon container that's filled with a conventional potting soil. I have some time-release fertilizer in the pot. The sort of fertilizer you use really doesn't matter that much. I tend to prefer a balanced time release, although just any organic like fish meal, or any balanced organic fertilizer is also going to work. Now, to do this, all we do is make a hole in the dirt like that, take the top, push it into the flower pot, and then tamp the dirt down tight around it. There you go. Done deal. This is it. That's all you need to do to get a pineapple to grow. Now, you'll water your pineapples. In warm weather, it doesn't really matter how you water them and how much you water them. In cold weather, if you're trying to grow them in an unheated greenhouse or some such thing like that, they do need to remain above freezing, and ideally they're going to remain above 50 degrees. Okay, so household temperatures of most houses in the winter, no matter where you live, will work for this fruit. It's also, when it comes to a tropical fruit, it is the most compact and easiest to deal with. It doesn't turn into a tree or anything like this. It always stays fairly small. Watch the tips. The tips are a little sharp on some varieties, more so on some than others. That's about the only hazard with a pineapple. I'd be careful with my eyeballs when bending down into the plant, because they could poke you in the eye. But otherwise, this thing will fit on your windowsill. It's not going to be a challenge to raise one. And when watering in the cold weather, I would suggest applying water only into the leaf whorls and just whatever excess to drain down and around into the soil a bit. The soil does not need to be particularly wet with this plant to grow well. In warm weather, water it however you like. Now I start off with a little bit of fertilizer in the pot, but later on I usually foliar feed these. And so you can use fish emulsion, will work fine. If you're a Miracle-Gro lover, you could use Miracle-Gro. But, use these things as directed. So, in other words, most of the packages on those are going to say about every 2 weeks or so. So that's what you need to do. If you're using a time-release type, well, maybe you can get away with 6 months in between. That's why I like them. I'm busy. I got a lot to do. Remembering the feed plants is sometimes difficult for me to do. So, that's how you grow one. Now, if you happen to live in Florida, Southern California, or any other place where conditions may approach near tropical, you can grow them in the field. Now, well-drained soil is a good idea, especially if you're in an area that might get a little cold. Heavy wet soils may rot the plants off, but a little bit of shelter during cold winter months, and you'll probably get by growing them right out in the field. Now, I had tried this in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's a little too cold. That is outdoors. In an unheated greenhouse, I finished off pineapples in the San Francisco Bay. And so that will work. A little further south, probably, Los Angeles and south, you could probably grow this thing right in your garden, I'm going to bet, because this is just one tough plant. Depending on the variety you choose will depend on how long it takes for the plant to fruit. The Florida pineapples we have here, we get fruit out of them in 12 months. This variety here, 18 to 24 months. And it's got everything in between 1 and 2 years on different varieties. It also depends on what part of the plant you got the material off of. Now, for most of you, you're going to take it off the top because that's what you're going to have. And that is the slowest piece. All right. There are what we call raccoon suckers below the fruit, and there's also basal suckers. Those tend to fruit faster than the tops do. And so once you get your plant growing and you have a pineapple to harvest, this variety will leave you with 7 offsets generally. 1 top, 3 raccoon sucker, usually 3 basal sucker. So you can make 7 pineapples out of 1 with this type. Some are more, some are less than others. The Florida one I have here is closer to about 10 offsets per plant. It's got a lot. Some of the others are much less than that. A lot of Dole's pineapples, for instance, were bred to have very few suckers because those suckers or slips do take some energy from the formation of the fruit. So this is just one beautiful, beautiful piece of fruit. And one way that a person can keep pineapple around year-round is to take fresh fruit when you have a lot of it and dehydrate it. Dehydrated pineapple is unbelievably good. Ooh, check this out. So because fresh fruit is very difficult to get off of this island, government regulations just simply do not allow us to send much off the island unless it's been run through an irradiator. And of course, I'm not going to irradiate my produce, so that's out of the question. So one of the solutions that we had come up with to how do you deal with all those extra bananas and all that pineapple and stuff when I can't sell it locally, we decided we would dry it. Okay, so I started drying this white pineapple, and this can be shipped. There's no prohibitions about dried fruit because there's no problem with diseases or insects or anything with this stuff. So I had no idea how good dried pineapple could possibly be until we started doing this. And just the other day, I had a very rewarding experience when one of my viewers from Oahu, a lady named Amy, who does fish farming, and we will be collaborating on some things in the future. She was here picking up pineapples, and I offered her pieces of dried pineapple while she was buying the fresh fruit. She put it in her mouth and immediately turned around, looked at me, and said, "You guys dipped this in sugar or honey or something, didn't you?" And I go, that's the way it comes out. She's going, "Really?" She could not believe how sweet a dried pineapple is. Oh, man. This is nature's candy. Awesome, awesome. And probably get fat trying to eat too much of this stuff. But it is incredible. And it's a really great way to store this fruit. And so if you grow pineapples and you got a lot of them, I really suggest turning it into this because then it can be used later in muffins and cookies. And, well, a friend of mine in California, who I'd shipped him dried pineapple, just recently sent me a recipe for a batch of Garibaldi that he'd produced. I had never heard of Garibaldi before. The only thing I knew about that word was a Pacific fish, bright yellow-orange fish called the Garibaldi. Turns out it was an Italian, was involved in politics in the 19th century, and I guess he's fairly famous worldwide. I knew nothing about him. But they also named a certain cookie or cracker type thing after him. It's sort of like 2 layers of cracker-like cookie that have raisins in between fruit filling, kind of like sort of like a Fig Newton, I guess you could sort of say. Anyway, Hugh had made up this batch of Garibaldi, and instead of putting the raisins in, he used this, and said it was required to get it right for spreading to add a little bit of water back to this pineapple to get it to spread out right. But I was real happy with the outcome, and I asked him for the recipe because we've been thinking about trying to use this in cookies here, and that just happened to pop up. Well, if you haven't had this, you are in for a treat. Seriously, hard to believe this could possibly be medicine. They say a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. Yeah, right. Don't need it. Don't need it. Yeah. So, eventually, not today, not tomorrow, but there will be a time fairly soon. We have increased the number of pineapples on the farm and continue to, that I will be offering this on my website. Right now, I don't have enough, but eventually. So we will have dried white pineapple straight from the side of Kilauea here in Hawaii, grown under the magnificent Hawaiian sun with hurricanes and lava and whales breaching and rainbows and waterfalls and the whole works. We're going to have it. It will happen. And so there you have it. If you got body pains, you just feeling sore, and you want some real tasty way to help alleviate that, start adding pineapple into your diet. Now, for those of you who do like bottled pills, bromelain will certainly substitute. It is the active enzyme, and you can use it that way too. But my take on stuff is, one, I want to be able to grow it right out here in the garden, so I can just walk out and get myself one. Don't need to go to Amazon to get it. And I want to incorporate it directly into my daily diet. That's my idea, rather than handfuls of pills. I'm not a pill guy. So I highly encourage everybody to include certain foods in your diet. I wish when I was a young man that I'd understood how much effect some of this food can have on the way you feel. I really didn't know that. I was an ignorant boy. Probably eating all the wrong things, Life goes on, body wears out a little bit, you get a little bit beat up, and suddenly you start to realize when you eat one thing it doesn't make you feel good, you eat the other thing and you feel better. Pineapples, and especially pineapples along with turmeric, fix you right up. Aloha, happy gardening, and I'm going to stay grumpy. Y'all hang loose. As you know, I'm the grumpy gardener when I need to be.